Okay, welcome to the Western Center Agricultural Health and Safety first seminar of the new year. Kara, could you advance to the next slide, please? Okay, I'm going to go through a few housekeeping items. The first, I'm going to repeat what Yahaira just said. This seminar is available with live interpretation. And so if you see the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, please select the language you would like to hear this seminar in, either English or Spanish. And so you can select English for to hear it in English, or you can select Spanish to hear it in Spanish. It's important that you do select a language. The seminar is also being recorded. All participants are muted. Throughout the seminar, please use the chat function to submit questions for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I will be facilitating that Q&A and we'll be able to have some dialogue with our speaker. Closed captioning is also available, so select the CC icon below and click Show Subtitles. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm really happy to be able to introduce our speaker, Dr. Samuel Sandoval. He'll be speaking about best management practices to keep pesticides out of water. And he's here at UC Davis, and we're really honored to have him. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh, you're muted.
Welcome everybody. Bienvenidos. Today I'm actually very excited. I really would like to thank Kara, Heather, and the rest of the team for inviting me to this webinar series. I don't know. It's I'm always very glad to share some of this information. Anyway, so let's get going. So the first thing that we will be talking about is California, and in this case it will be California, and I will be providing some background on California and then a hydrology 101. Then we'll talk about some of the practices to keep pesticides out of water, and then in order to do that, so how pesticides get into water, and then how to prevent a lot of that. So I will be working on this. I'm keeping an eye on the chat, just in case anyone wants to submit a question. So California climate and physiography. So we live in a Mediterranean climate. So what is a Mediterranean climate? Un clima mediterráneo. So it is dry summers, wet winters. It rains during the winter, so when it's cold, and it is very dry during summer. So for 6 months, 6 to 8 months, I think right now, we have the clear, sunny, blue sky of California. Now, what you're seeing here is the warmer the colors means that there is a lot of moisture in the air. What you're seeing here, and later I'm going to show you a video, is how California receives 50 to 60% of the precipitation in the state. These are called atmospheric rivers, ríos atmosféricos. Also, people call them Pineapple Express, and that is because they pass through Hawaii. So these ones, what basically they do, this is a band of moisture in the air on top of the ocean. So these are a lot of clouds that are moving towards the continent, and when they hit the coast range, they will move up and it will deposit rain. And then they will come into the Central Valley, and that action will, so when the clouds move upwards, they get colder. And because they get colder, they deposit rain. When they are in the valley, then it will become down, it will come down, and that will make it warmer. So that's why we don't have rain in this area or in this area. And that is called the rain shadow. When the atmospheric river or the clouds hit the Sierra Nevada, basically they go very, very high. And as they are going higher, they are not only depositing rain, but also snow. In our case, the snow line used to be 5,000 feet, 1,500 meters, 1,500 metros of elevation. Now I think it's moving upwards, and that is moving upwards because of global warming. So, okay, so this is an atmospheric river. So basically what you're seeing here is a lot of these atmospheric rains that they are occurring. So what you can see is that atmospheric rain, it will bring a lot. So this on the x-axis is time. We started in October 1st because that's when the water year starts. So why the water year starts in October 1st? That is because we'll go from the rainy season all the way to the dry season. So we want to account how much water it rains and then how much water we will be using. This on the y-axis is cumulative precipitation. So basically every time that it rains, we add that volume or that height of precipitation to the previous precipitation event that happened before. And we start counting on October 1st. You can see that these graphs, they look like a stair. So basically, for example, here a good example. So it will not rain, and then it will have a sudden rain that it will bring a lot of rain. This shorter time, this is an atmospheric river. It is a precipitation that occurs in less than 3 days, 2 to 3 days. They will bring about 50 to 60% of the water. And they are very important. So if we have 3 atmospheric rivers in a year, we are in a drought year. If we have 5 or 6 atmospheric rivers in a year, we are in a wet year. So those are the atmospheric rivers. This is the average. So in the Sacramento, it typically rains between rain and snow, 50 inches of rain and snow. So 50 inches will be 1.25 meters of elevation. So that's how much it will rain. Now, here, this is the first year that I arrived to Davis. So as I was flying out of the state, I'll see a lot of snow. And you'll see that I will use this as a reference point. Okay, so 2010, 2011, a very wet year or above average. Also for determining if it is a dry year or a wet year, we use it by comparing with the average year. So this will be a wet year. This is the driest. And then this will be 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015. This was the previous drought or the beginning of a long-term drought. So these are the first year of the drought that we had on this decade, well, on the previous decade. Then we're gonna have from here the wettest year, then another dry year, another wet year, another dry year, and this is the current drought. So this is the first year of the current drought, the second year, and this is the year that just ended before. It should be 2021, 2022, sorry. But so basically this is where we are right here. So on 2022, we ended up at 80% of average. And you can see that the previous year we were here, which this one will be 60% and this one will be 50%. So we went 50, 60, and now 80%. So let me show you the snowpack. Let me show you how it looks. The snowpack. I will start with this year, this first year, that's when I came to California. And then we'll see the entire first part of the drought, then wettest year. And then we're gonna be going like wet, dry, until we're going to this one. But this year here, 2010 to 2011, I'm gonna use it for reference. So this is it. This is the snowpack, and this is, so the colder the colors means that there is more snow. This is 2011. Yes, it was one of the wet years, but it wasn't the wettest. It was just right in the middle between average and wet, okay? So this is the first year of the drought. Sorry, something to mention is that I'm comparing this or taking these snapshots at April 1st. So why April 1st? So that is the date, the calendar date that we think we already have the last big snow event. So in terms of snowfall, this will be the biggest one. Okay, so first year of the drought, second year of the drought, third year of the drought, fourth year of the drought. So this is the Sierra Nevada without Nevada. Definitely no water at all in the Sierra. This will be the fifth year of the drought. And as you can see here, this was a 5-year drought that it really hit pretty hard California. Now, what you're gonna see, what is coming on this right side is the wettest year on record. So what you're gonna see here is the year that has rained and snowed the most in the last 100 years. So are you ready? So, ta-da! That is the wettest year. So it doesn't look that wet, right? And actually, it looks actually drier than the 2011 that I was comparing. What this means is that we have a warmer climate. What is happening is that we are having a lot of precipitation, but it is coming more in rain rather than snow. And why do we care? So all what you're seeing here and also here is the biggest storage, the biggest reservoir in California, which is the snowpack. So water falls in terms of snow, let's say in January or February, and because it doesn't melt and it falls in terms of snow, it will stay there until June, July, when it starts melting. The main problem is that we have now more in terms of rain that sometimes we have to let it out, or we cannot catch it in the reservoirs. It is also evaporating, so we are losing our largest reservoir. Okay, so this is the wettest. This is another dry year, another wet year. Sorry, a dry year. These 2 years, 2011, 2019, and 2011, if you look at them, they are pretty similar in terms of precipitation. But if you look at these pictures, so in total, when we were just counting how much it rained, they are very close. But if we're looking at how much snowpack do we have, in comparison, we have far less. And that is because of global warming. So first year of the drought, second year of the drought. This is, well, this year, last water year. This is how we were in April 1st. As you can see, this is pretty similar of the Sierra Nevada without Nevada. So what I'm trying to tell you is that what it took 4 years to go to these conditions, now it only took us 3 years. That is the other part that we are very worried. That now is taking a smaller amount of time to actually go to the worst conditions. Okay, so this is just kind of overall. When we finished last year's, so we were in terms of rain of snow, 80% of precipitation in the Sacramento River, 60 in San Joaquin, and 60 in Tulare. Reservoir storage, relative to average, we were in the 60s, 40s, but compared to storage capacity, we were 40%. So currently the reservoirs are at 40%. In Tulare is only 12% of the size of the bucket, of the size of the reservoir. Groundwater has gone down for the last 100 years. And the soil is very dry. And that is very important because everything that is raining, and remember that it rained a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, all that water, rather than going into the reservoirs or into the aquifers, because the soil is so dry, it is just taking all that moisture, filling that soil profile, and all the plants are taking the water back into the atmosphere. So even though we have a good storm, it is already gone. Yeah, look at this California Watch, and they have a lot of this information available. Now, okay, this is the part of the hydrology 101. So if you look at California and in general any valley, think of it like a bathtub, como una tina de baño. So the Central Valley, think of a bathtub that the Sierra Nevada, Tehachapi Coast Range, and the Trinity Alps, they are the rim of the bathtub. Now think that this bathtub is filled with sediment, is filled with sand. So in this case, the outlet of the bathtub is here in the middle of on the bathtub, on that left side. In most of the valleys, the outlet of the bathtub is here at the end. So why is this important? Because when it rains here in the Sierra, it rains, the soil profile might be like a foot to sometimes 3-4 feet. But then underneath that soil, that loose material, underneath there is solid bedrock. Está la roca dura. And so basically, whatever it rains, it will fill that soil profile. Trees and plants will take that water and put it back into the atmosphere. It will evapotranspire, or water will go into rivers. That system is called rainfall runoff. So what it rains, some of it will run off. Here in the valley, we have an additional ingredient. So it can rain, the soil profile will also get wet, it can go to the river, but underlying this sediment, there are aquifers. So an aquifer is a container. Think of it like the bottom, the container that is this bottom part of the bathtub. So that is the container, and the water inside the container is groundwater because that water is in the ground. So if the soil is surrounded by water, we call it groundwater. Basically, that's what it is. You can see that that's how it looks into the Central Valley. So just looking at the time, back in the day, on in-person events, I will bring this, which is, think of it like an ant farm. It might be like a foot and a half height, 2 feet long. And this is a representation of an aquifer. Think that we are cutting a slice of the valley. So this is how it will look like. We'll have some soil. This is sandy soil. This is coarser sandy soil. This layer here, this band of soil is called, well, it is compacted. It's clay that we compacted really, it's highly compacted. And this underneath here is, once again, coarse, thing like coarse salt. It's actually coarse sand. So when we put water in here, the water will be first stored in this upper aquifer, because this upper aquifer can move right and left, and it is right next to the atmospheric pressure, right next to the soil. We call it unconfined aquifer. It can move freely right and left. Now, this guy underneath, and remember that the aquifer is the container. We are going to put water in here, and that water that is here, we are going to call it groundwater. This one underneath here, it's a confined aquifer. So why is confined? Because at the bottom here, there is plastic. This layer is a layer that is of clay that is highly compacted. So water will pass, but it will take a lot of time. So for the purpose of today, or for practical purposes, we call it a confining layer, that water doesn't pass. It will pass, but it takes a lot of time. This, we have here a screen, so that's why water can pass through here and there. But think of it like a encapsulated water. A confining aquifer is like we have that water encapsulated in there. Okay, so this pipe, este tubo, it has holes. And as it has holes, it will put water or it will drip water. So this is our representation of an atmospheric river. Yeah, this is the cross-section of a river. As I mentioned, unconfined, confined layer, and confined aquifer. And these are wells. So this is literally a pipe, un tubo, it's just a pipe. And here it has holes. And later I use here a syringe and I can take water in and out. This well is in the unconfined aquifer or in the shallow aquifer. This well is really deep, it's in the deep aquifer or it's a deep well. Piezometers. Piezometers are like thermometers, but for groundwater. So how is that? Here, think of it that you drill a hole, put a pipe, and the pipe has holes. Water will get into the pipe, and you can measure the water table. Piezometers measure the water table, how high or how low is the water in the ground. The higher the water, the more water is stored. The lower the water table, the lower the water is stored. Okay, you're becoming very soon a professional hydrologist. So let me tell you what happened in winter. So what is going on here? So this, what I'm drawing is the water table. So as you can see, it is horizontal. I'm going to start putting water, so think that it rained and water went into the rivers. As you can see, water on this side, water is increasing at a faster rate than on this side. So that is because water in this area is closer to this side. But what the other part that I want to tell you is that water is infiltrating at the bottom of the river, and that infiltration is recharging the aquifer. So at the beginning, the water level was horizontally here. As water is passing through rivers, the rivers we have leaky pipes, so the rivers are leaking water into the soil underneath. And when they are passing the valley, is leaking that water to the underlying aquifer. So why is important to keep rivers with water? Because basically they are recharging the aquifers. And the aquifers is like our savings accounts when it doesn't rain or for droughts. So that is basically what is going on here. Yep. Eventually we leave it enough time, this water table will be horizontal. Okay. Why it takes a lot of time? Because water is moving around the particles of the soil. So that's why it's taking a lot of time for you to see this. Okay, next one. No, this one here. So winter. So in winter, we may have, this is the atmospheric river, and I'm putting, you can see that water is pouring out of this pipe. So all the water is moving. Something that I want you to notice here is that as water is going down, the soil can drink water. So the soil can infiltrate water. But think that it starts drinking water, but you are pouring more water into the soil. You are trying to drink more that you can actually drink. So in this case, what happened is that water will be spilling. Well, we're going to have runoff, escurrimiento. And basically what that happened is that because the soil is not able to drink, that excess water will move as runoff, surface runoff. So that's what you're going to be seeing in here. So voila. And that water is not only, this rainfall is not only recharging the aquifer, as you can see here. So as it is infiltrating, it is also recharging the river. In this case, so let me see. So this was going pretty well. And then I think I stopped the rain, and you can see that rivers may recede, but the groundwater might still be full. So in winter, we have a lot of these big storms, rains and runoff, and water flowing downstream. Yep, and it will carry sediment. So when we have runoff, water not only move water, but also sediment. Now in late spring, Oh, I see. So when water is, let me see if I have it here. Okay, so it is raining on the Sierra, okay? And if it is raining on the Sierra, again, it's a rainfall runoff. So it rains, either it saturates or fills with water the soil, and then all the water goes into the river. And rivers are gushing down. Rivers are moving a lot of, they're moving faster downstream. They move faster because they don't have that many obstacles. It's just the rock underneath. When water moves into in the ground, it is an obstacle race. They have to move around all the different particles. So in here, they are just moving fast. Because they are moving fast, they have a lot of energy. So when water is moving downstream fast, with all that energy starts carrying sediment. When they are carrying all this sediment and enter the valley, all of a sudden in the valley that is not that steep, that is it is more gentle slope, they will drop all the sediment. They will drop all the rocks. In these areas at the foothills, al pie de la colina. So basically when they do that, these areas dropping all that sediment, they deposit it in a way of a fan, un abanico. So that's what they are called alluvial fans. These places, when water passes, so this has occurred year after year for millions of years. So when the river passes through these parts where it deposits all the sediment and the sediment is really coarse, water can infiltrate right there into the aquifer. So these are called aquifer recharge zones, zonas de recarga de acuífero. So these are very important. I'm putting here, you're going to see that I'm going to start dropping water in here and here. And as I'm putting water in these two columns, these columns have a screening here. So water will move from the column into the aquifers, simulating when water passed through here into these alluvial fans and these recharge zones that recharge aquifers. So I'm putting water on this side and you can see that the level is going up. And then I think, oh, sorry. I think I pour first water on this side. And then I'm gonna put water from here to here. And what you're gonna see is that these areas are not only recharging the groundwater, but you can see that they are also recharging rivers. Rivers interact with aquifers and aquifers interact with rivers. So see, everything gets full and eventually it will get leveled. Okay, now in summer, almost there. So in summer, let me see. So we have now the levels in here. Okay. So what I am going to do is, this is a pipe that is connected to this hole. So I'm going to put the pipe down and I'm going to drain the river, thinking that that water is going somewhere downstream. What you're going to see is that because the water table, so the height of the water in the ground is above the bottom of the river, water from the river will start feeding, water from the aquifer, sorry, will start feeding the river. So I put it down, the river has been drained, coming up. And now you can see that water starts coming in, and that water is from the ground. Again, slowly but surely, that's what is happening. So now, also something that I want you to notice here is that, so you're seeing a river that still has water and is mid-August or late July. So if we don't have a reservoir up there that is releasing water, if there is no reservoir up there, all that water is coming from the soil and from the aquifers that are feeding that specific river, and that is going downstream. I mean, if you have gone to Yosemite National Park, Sequoias, Yosemite River, the McCollum River, all of them, they are fed by all these aquifers and soil moisture throughout the year. So that is impressive. Now, the next thing that we do in summer is that we extract water. So what you're gonna seeing here is you're gonna see how I put a syringe and I start extracting water, and you can see that not only water from the ground on these sides will be going down, but also we're gonna deplete the water that is in the river. So here is the syringe. I'm taking water from the shallow aquifer, extracting some water in here, and then I will extract more water, and why not, we have another irrigation event. So you can see that now the river and the aquifer start just going down. So when a person says like, well, actually I'm extracting water from the ground, well, the ground is connected with rivers, so ultimately we are also extracting water from the rivers. Okay, so now this, by now you are in these last 20 minutes, 17 minutes, now you are officially hydrology, so congratulations. Now, what we're going to be doing is I will be talking about now integrated pest management. And I want to mention that, so the first thing is that application of chemical pesticides is the last resource, like really, really, really the last. I didn't have anything to do. And also mention that there are other practices that can be done in order to prevent the application of chemical pesticides. So that is number one. The second one is that chemical pesticides, in the end, the pest will get a resistant to the chemical. So try to apply it in small doses or in the doses that the PCA, the Pesticide Control Advisor, tells you. Or if you're applying it on your home, read the label. But if you over apply it and there is a pest that resists the pesticide, that is the one that is going to procreate. And that one, it has the genes to resist the pesticide that you applied. So it will create resistance. So what I'm trying to tell you is that just be aware. This is the last resource and it will get resistant. So we can use cultural practices, rotation and crop selection, selection of pest-resistant species, prescribed burns, biological. We can bring animal grazing, hedgerows, predator and parasites, all this beneficial fauna, ladybugs, catarinas, some of them, some places they call it mariquitas. So some of those. Physical or mechanical, that can be hand labor. Soil tilling, mulching. We sometimes apply some or put some black clothes to prevent or to impede that the weed will go and take some of the sun. And at the end, chemical. So how do pesticides get into water? This is where the hydrology meets the pesticides. So when we apply pesticides, it can be through spray, it can be through different methods. The pesticide can stay in the soil, can evaporate, if we have wind, it can drift, or it can stay in the soil, and when we have rain or an excessive irrigation, the water can carry the soil, the sediment, and that sediment and water will end up in the rivers or in the ditches, and that's how can pesticide end up in rivers. And this is pretty much, it can be two conditions: an excessive or a lot of rain, a lot of irrigation, or that the conditions of the field are in a steep hill, vineyards, viñedos. So anyway, another part is that the pesticide can be here, and if it's soluble, if it really likes water and it dissolves in water, water eventually will infiltrate past the root zone and it will go into the groundwater. And that's how pesticides can contaminate groundwater. So because they are very soluble, and it's again, a huge rain or a huge or more than needed irrigation, and that will go downwards towards the groundwater. So pretty much I told you the story. So what I was talking to you about runoff processes and infiltration processes, how fast the soil can drink, this is why it's important, because if we have runoff and that runoff is carrying sediment, it will end up in rivers. If we have a lot of irrigation and the pesticide is soluble, it will go with the pesticides to the aquifer. Okay, so how can we prevent this? So you need to know some of the soil properties, pesticide properties, and then identify some applicator practices to reduce that. So soil texture, depending on the percent of silt, clay, and sand. This is how is the soil texture, and we have certain values associated to the soils. Now you may not know all the parts of the soil or the soil texture, but in here, you can actually look for a map that it will tell you what is the percent of sand, clay, and silt, so you can put it in here. Deep to groundwater, the shallower the water, the more likely that we can contaminate it. In California, we have the groundwater protection areas. So what that means is that you can go to this website, and if you're applying pesticides in any of these counties, there are restricted zones where you cannot apply pesticides because they can be leaching. There can be problems related with leaching, so infiltration, runoff, excess water going into rivers, or both. This is a map. This is a map where this is not permitted to apply pesticides because of runoff, or because of infiltration, leaching, or because of both. These GWPIs, these groundwater protection areas, is basically because they are infiltration zones. So that's what I was talking about, these alluvial fans. Okay, so this is the part of the soils. We have the soil profile. We know how much sand, how much clay, how much silt, and the deepness of the ground. Now, in terms of the pesticide characteristics, there are basically three. So the first one is persistence. So how long does it stay on the environment? Does it stay less than 2 weeks? Does it stay between 2 weeks and 2 months? Or does it stay longer than 2 months? All the pesticides will tell you. You can look in this database how persistent they are. And this is called half-life. So the half-life is you applied a pesticide, and then if it says 16 days later, half of the volume that you applied will still be in the environment. So that's what that means. Solubility tells you how they actually are soluble, how they like the water and move with the water, dissolve with the water. And absorption is how they attach to the soil. These are kind of funky units. They are called KOC, but low might be less than 1,000. Moderate between 1,000 and 10,000, and high more than 10,000. What this means is that a pesticide that has a high absorption, it really sticks to the soil. And where the soil moves, the pesticide moves. This will be moderately, this will be low. Take a look at the weather, and then you'll see if do not apply pesticides, or always look at the weather when you're scheduling a pesticide application, a chemical pesticide application, if that is the last resource that you want to go. See if there is also an irrigation schedule for that field, and see when are they going to apply it. So if you're the irrigator and the pesticide applicator, that's good. But if you are not, so you really have you really want to talk to the irrigator and ask them when are they going to have the following irrigation, and make sure that they are aware that a problem in the irrigation event, so how much water they are putting on their system, may affect or may contaminate either the aquifer or the soil. Remember, the label is the law. So here you read and follow the label instructions, good practices. Okay, so let's actually go to a couple of examples. Oh, you already saw this video. And basically it's all the water running off in here. So the soil cannot drink water, and we have surface runoff, water flowing on top of the surface. And at the end, it will carry sediments towards the river that it is shown in a moment. There. So I went to the database that is on the chat, and I type oxyfluorophene, and in that web page, it tells me all this information. So oxyfluorophene, the half-life is 300 days in silt and loam. So this is where the type of soil comes into play. 600, almost 600 days in sand. So what this means is that you apply oxyfluorophene and it will stay in the environment for a year to almost 2 years, a year to a year and a half. Okay. It really sticks to it has a high KOC. So you can actually see it in here. This is greater than 10,000. So it really sticks to the soil. Doesn't say it's very likely to reach shallow groundwater. Here I didn't put the solubility, but here what it says basically is that it doesn't like water. So this is an example that I had of an application in the center of downtown Sacramento. So the soil texture, I went to that website and it is silt. Depth to groundwater 17 feet, and it's not in a groundwater protected area. Then I used this, went into this pesticide, and I got these values. I didn't crop the image here, but if you go in here, it will tell you that the solubility is 0.016 milligrams per liter. So it is less than 10 milligrams. So it's very low. The absorption is really high, and the persistence, so how long will it stay in the environment, is really high. So what that means is that oxyfluorophene is very persistent, so it stays a lot in the environment, in the fields, and it binds very well to the soil. So if the soil moves, it will move where the soil moves. If we have a huge irrigation event and it will carry sediment, that's how you can contaminate rivers. If we have a huge rain event and that will move sediment, there you go. So, look, they will go there. And what can you do? See if you can change pesticides, monitor the weather, be conscious of the irrigation practice, talk to your irrigator, read and follow the label. Let's go to leaching and see what's going on here. This is a video. Oh, this is super cool. So, think that I have a pesticide that I'm applying it, and then I put it on top of the soil. Now it's already on the soil profile. And then after that, I think there will be a rain event. So I will turn this. And you can see that as it is raining, all the pesticide is going down. And it may even contaminate the lower aquifer. So once again, I'm in the downtown Sacramento and I'm here. These are the dates, the data, sorry. This is another pesticide, the active ingredient of a pesticide, atrazine. And then, so this has a persistence of 100 days. So almost 3 months, a little bit longer than 3 months. It's moderately soluble, 33 milligrams. So it is in here. 160 days is high persistence, moderate solubility. And here you can see that the KOC is very low. I don't know where it doesn't say. It's less than 100. Need to put that value in there. Oh, absorption KOC 100. You know, so that means that is less than 1,000. So it is very low. What that means is that atrazine dissolves in water and it will move where the water moves. If you're in a field with a high slope and then the water is not going into the soil, it will run off. If it is in a level field or in a flat field and we have over application of water, it may pass the root zone and end up in the aquifer like that. Look. So again, see if you can change the pesticides, monitor the weather, be conscious. So this is the last one. And then I think we should go to questions. Glyphosate. So this is not very persistent. It's only 4 days, but it is very soluble. So it will stay very small time in the environment, so it will degrade very fast, but it is very soluble and it absorbs pretty well to the soil. So we have an over irrigation, we may end up in the ground, or it may end up in the rivers. If during those 4 days, it will bind pretty well to the soil. So if we have an irrigation event or any runoff event because of irrigation or rain, it can carry the pesticide. So with this one, just be aware. It moves in a short time period. So you will have to be aware or coordinating those 8 days, what is going on there. So there is this, which is a book in English and Espanol. So that's a very good book, highly recommended. Don't apply or don't mix, load, or do any application of pesticides 100 feet close to the well. If you do that, it really will get into the aquifer pretty fast. So that's what I was doing it. Yep. If a field has solely used chemical suppression, yeah, it will be very difficult, but not impossible. I think start with cover crops, any of the soil health practices in Victoria, and that will start recovering some of the water holding capacity. And then from that, then you will start doing all the rotations. And basically, as I went in here to this list, I did it on purpose. I really did this list on purpose. This one here, because you should start with cultural practices, biological, then you really want to bend your back and do all the hand labor, and the last one is chemical. I did this list on purpose. So we have that. Choose wisely your pesticides, monitor weather conditions, schedule and monitor irrigation, follow the label. If there is any of the screenshots that you want to do, this is it, guys. And this is what you really want to take a picture. These are all the websites that you can have. I'll see if I can post it also on the chat. Yep. And this is me back in the day, providing this in a field day. Remember, use the water that you need, but not a drop more. Usa el agua que necesites, pero ni una gota más. And I think that will be it for me. Sorry, it was a lot of information.
Oh, it's so much good information. Thank you so much. It's a complicated system and it's such an important system. So we thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I'd like to invite folks to put questions into the chat, please. We still have some time to ask Dr. Sandoval some questions. We know from working with many community partners across the state that pesticides are one of the greatest concerns of many community partners, many farm workers. And I think a lot of that is because it feels sometimes to them like a black box. It's not well understood or communicator trained. And I think that that's part of the issue. And I'm wondering, one question I have for you is how in the outreach and education and training that you've done throughout your research and your work, what opportunities do you see to bridge some of that science education, both to growers, pesticide applicators, and to community partners and farm workers?
So I think the header, so the first thing is to open the eyes and rather than just ignore it, the first thing is to acknowledge that chemical pesticide is not the solution. It is one of the solutions, but it's not the solution. And the second one is that it is actually the last solution. It's not the first solution. So I think that is extremely important. The one other thing is pesticides, the CIDES, C-I-D-E-S, it means that kills. Es veneno. So I think the other message is that, so whoever is handling poison. And then if we don't take care, or if we are not careful, it may end up in the rivers or in the aquifer, where the water will come back into our home. And that is also, the first thing is very good to know. Why is that? Because sometimes we are asked to apply pesticides, or sometimes we see people applying pesticides, and we should raise our concerns that, okay, so sure, did you go through the list first instead of going start with the bottom? To me, that is extremely important. Many conversations that I have with farm workers, they start by telling me like, no one told me about this, and I'm drinking the water right next to the field. And I've seen that people are applying pesticides, and should I be worried? And the answer is yes. And the second one is that we have to raise our hand. So be conscious. You can literally go to your tap, the urine samples, so the one that you buy in CVS, you can use those to actually open it, fill it with water, and take it to test lab. I'll see if I can find the test lab in UC Davis. You can bring it. We can test if they has any pesticides. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I mean, I'm really sorry, but it is very likely in California, if you're close to an agricultural field and the well is taking water there, it might be contaminated. So second one, filters under the sink. I know they are very costly. It's more costly to have cancer. So that one, and again, raise the hand and say like, that is not fair. We are very proud to work on agriculture. It's not fair that because of the practice that we're working, we're getting sick. Like really, it's not fair. So anyway, I think, sorry. No, go ahead, Heather.
Well, I was going to clarify that. So well water is not being purified, but if you're consuming, so what is you talked about groundwater and pesticides leaching into groundwater. Can you talk a little bit about the city treatments or county? What kind of treatment do public waters go through before they come out of our tap?
You're really going to the heart of the problem. So when we have a well, it's just taking the water and put it out of the ground. Systems, so drinking water systems for cities or for some communities, what they do is they pass it through filters, and those filters will catch some of that pesticide, or it catch a lot of the pesticides. They also kill bacteria. So that is the difference to live in a city like, let's say, Fresno, Visalia, Bakersfield, than to live in a small rural community of 10, 15 houses that they have only one well, and those 15, 20 houses are taking water from that well. Now, what you're mentioning, Heather, is also something that currently the state is working on, which is called consolidation. What does that mean? That consolidate water supply systems. So these small systems, we can throw a pipe from larger systems to small systems to provide clean water, because we know that water from the ground is contaminated. To me, one of the most eye-opening facts is that we're giving water with pesticides and fertilizer to people, and we're giving snowmelt water from reservoirs and canals to crops. And that, I really hate it. But we are working on it. We have to raise aware of this. So we have some questions in there.
We do. Okay. Who or what agencies are responsible for monitoring pesticide contamination in wells, rivers, and aquifers?
So one is DPR, is Department of Pesticides Regulation. And also this, if any person that is applying pesticides gets sick, by law, you have to tell DPR that you got sick. If someone that lives close or was exposed to pesticides gets sick, by law, they have to go to DPR. And you can say like, hey, this application actually made me sick. And they will take, so DPR.
Yeah.
The other one that is monitoring the water quality, so that is on the sickness.
Yeah.
And the applications. The soil sampling is the State Water Resources Control Board.
And then we have a question from one of our education and outreach specialists, Teresa Andrews, who often uses that side example that you talked about it is trying to kill something, pesticide. And she asks about whether there's a way to clean the soil. So is there a way to clean it, or is it just a matter of time that you have to wait for the pesticide to disappear?
Yeah, it's a matter of time. That is the other problem. When you contaminate groundwater, man, it's really difficult to clean it. So, Heather, the main problem here will be, let me see, I cannot find the, oh, I think now it's everyone, sorry. So I'm putting, now I can put a lot of these things here. So DPR, and then I'm gonna put all the resources that I put, sorry, just super fast. So, and then one there, and then. So in order to clean an aquifer, literally you have to flush it. So think that you have the aquifer contaminated under your feet. So you put water on one end and you extract water from the other end. And the underlying water with contaminant under your feet, you try to flush it from your right side to your left side. So flushing on it underneath. It takes a lot of time because groundwater moves slower. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of dollars. Then where you're gonna end up throwing the water that you are taking out that is contaminated, it is a huge deal. That is why it's so important not to apply chemical pesticides. So this is like, how can I not get emphysema cancer from smoking? Well, don't smoke, right? It is that simple, right?
Right.
Just don't smoke. Well, this is the same.
Yeah. So we're at time, but I have one more question I want to ask you, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So why is IPM and all of those different strategies before chemical pesticides, why don't we see more of those being used in large agricultural operations? Yeah.
So to be sincere, I mean, the shortest answer is money. So I think there is a difference between quality food and high production food. Well, both of them can be high production, but I think is more cost benefit. So when you are doing all those applications, those cultural practices and biological practices and so on, you're spending labor and money, you're spending a part of your field and money, you're spending a lot of supervision and money, which when you use that one and you want to save, then what is the strategy that you do? You just go and do just one pass of pesticides, next one. That is to be painfully clear. I think, so to me, I came to the conclusion that we need to have socially responsible and environmentally responsible agriculture. And I don't think it's a matter of small or large. It's a company that want to say, you know, I want to play good by the social and environmental aspect, and I will not expose my labor or my farm workers to the fewest pesticides that I can, and I will start with all of that, with all the practices before going to the chemical pesticides. That's on the environmentally responsible. I will invest in the community. I will pay good salaries. And typically those are small farm, family oriented, but they cannot be. Typically large industrial agriculture is not socially, not environmentally responsible, but it is not a matter of size or,
right.
I think it's the vision. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it takes changing the system for that to be sustainable. It's very difficult to operate within the current agricultural system and survive. those farms that are succeeding, those small farms are barely getting by within the current system of commerce and agriculture. Yeah.
You know, I think, so we spend relatively well, depending on who is the we, but some families are spending a larger proportion of the household income than others, but either we spend it on the groceries or we spend it on the hospital. And that is also extremely sad, but it is very true. And also, so something that anyone can do here, and this is extremely important, you have the power to change the system by what you are buying and where you're buying it. It is incredible. So if you go to a farmer's market, so you can go to a co-op or you can go to a regular grocery store. And that one will send a different signal. The grocery store, you can see where most of it, some of them, yeah, the majority will be on this kind of more high production, low cost food. That yes, it's saving you some dollars, but it is, someone is paying the bill. Farm workers, you actually by eating some of those may contain pesticide residues and so on. Anyway, so yeah, when you go, next time that you go to the grocery stores and where you go, this is it. And also be mindful of what I just told you. Let's open the eyes and let's raise our hand.
Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for staying with us a few minutes after the hour. What a great start to our seminar series. We really appreciate you being with us. And we will be sharing, I see the question about links. We will include those in a follow-up email. This seminar will be posted to YouTube, both in English and Spanish. And we will have a follow-up email with links and resources in the next few days. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you so much, Dr. Sandoval.
Thank you, Heather. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos.
Goodbye.